Hello my baby gorillas, and we've got a new camera, new lights, and the whole thing is looking tickety-boo. I think I'll reduce the size of me. I think that's better. Let me know if the sound is okay. We had a bit of a problem with the sound, and just to make sure that the sound is correct. Don't know if it could be reduced any smaller. Let's see if that's a better fit. Let's have a wee look and see if this is actually coming across well. I don't want to go too much into the local elections. I'll cover that tomorrow. Let's see, where are we? Let's see if it's all coming through. Let's see.
This is how AI helped me get 8 hours of work done in 2. My calendar used to look like this. Messy.
Let's see if it's all coming through. Sounds good. Sounds good. And we've got a new camera here. So let me just check this once more time. So we've got a new camera. And it's looking tremendous. Even the green screen's working better, isn't it? Unbelievable. Let's see if it's all coming through. It's looking tremendous. Oh, let's pop the chat. Where are we? Where's the thing? Pop the chat, pop the chat. And I think that's us, ready to rock and roll. So, I don't want to cover too much of the local elections, but I find this quite funny and accurate as well from Candice. Candice just always nails it.
Your chromosomes before coming here, you can say it's an act, but the truth is it's an act that everybody plays into. Everybody looks at how a person looks like and says, oh, they're a woman or male based off of that.
If you grow an afro and wear a wig and put, a lot of black makeup on, you're not a black woman, so your appearance doesn't actually mean anything. You're not black, and the same way that I'm not white. So how if we can trick someone, you might be able to trick me. I think Rachel Dolezal did a really good job tricking people into believing that she was black for a long time by darkening her skin, getting super tan and wearing fake wigs, but she wasn't actually a black woman. So how you feel on the inside and how you present, you might be able to trick people, but that makes you a liar, not a woman.
As I did.
Well, there you go. Candice on the money again. So let's just stick up this and just so we're on... I think there's a problem with, well, as we can see, let's just take one thing at a time. As you can see, everything's up. Number of views is up. Number of watch times up. Number of subscribers, unsubscribers is up. So we're all up. Last month was the best month we've had. And after 500 videos, we're going to earn about 60 quid or something like that. But so that's about, what's that, about a penny a video. Thanks, YouTube. But yeah, it's moving forward. At least it's getting bigger. So let's see if we can copy this. Let's click on that. Let's see if this is it. We're going live in this.
So if you want to trade profitably,
here we go. We'll stick it on Twitter. So just to see if anybody wants to come across and have a chat. Let's put up the actual what it is, because sometimes it doesn't actually tell you on Twitter unless you announce it. So basically the subject of this video is about not just Nigel coming back, but also Uncle Albert and Jeremy Steptoe Corbyn. And let's see, Jeremy. And what that would mean for British politics. So,
Target.
This is So even though the Uncle Albert is a far lefty, he's still an open door proponent, a bit like the anarcho-capitalists are open door exponents. The anarcho-capitalists want no benefit system, whereas the anarcho-communists are trying to destroy the civilization and the population that are already here, which obviously he falls into. So Jeremy and Georgie Porgy were close in the back benches there, and we were potentially seeing the first. And this, so there obviously anti-Semitism, de-invest from Israel now, and with the Islamo-fascists here. So we already know that this is a GIMP party. So there's his expert.
Neighbouring MP, a trailblazer in every sense of the word. First black woman.
First girlfriend of Jeremy Corbyn.
Elected to Parliament in 1987. I remember that day very, very well. And the abuse she received and receives is phenomenal. I don't know if you ever do. Look at her stuff on X and then read the comments. It makes you feel sick. After the first 6 comments, you just feel sick. And so the racism that she suffered and what the leaked report...
I don't think it's racism that's the problem. Well, not from... my point of view, I just don't think she's very competent. I don't think all people from an African descent are not competent. I just think she's not competent. And I think that's unfortunately, I think she gets lambasted probably with potentially what people call racism. But I think the reality is that she's just not very good. And that's unfortunate to say, but she's just not really up to it. I don't think she's alone. I think there's a number of people who have lessened the quality of MP.
Showed was the levels of attitudes amongst...
And I don't think that's because she's black or a woman.
People that, I must say, surprised even me. The comments and the horrible stuff they said about Diane, about Dawn Butler.
But they're quite happy to be racist against white people and call it white supremacy and try and ethnically cleanse the population through the use of mass immigration, which is illegal under international law.
About women in general and some of the stuff that was said about me as well. It's just disgusting.
Uncle Albert.
Listen, let's just be clear. Any form of racism is wrong.
Oh, what about anti-Semitism, Steptoe?
Anti-Semitism is wrong, is that?
Yeah, but if you're standing with a sign saying de-invest in the only Jewish state, what anti-Islamic stances have you taken for the murder and the persecution of 340 million people have died under Islam? Or the colonisation of all these Muslim countries that weren't Muslim before?
Islamophobia is wrong, racism is wrong, any form is wrong.
I mean, it's just, he's not got anything to add. All he does is use buzzword, communist buzzwords, and that's it. So, but...
And you deal with that by
ethnically cleansing the indigenous population.
Education, you deal with it by campaigning, you deal with it by respect for different faiths, different cultures.
Why do I need to respect different faiths, different cultures? And why are other people not fitting into the culture that's already here? If they've came to this culture in this area, surely they want to fit in with the culture that's here. Or why would you have left the other culture unless you want to be a colony of another culture? And if you're a colony, why have you been colonised? I thought colonisation was wrong. So make up your mind. You can't have two hypocritical postures at the same time.
Different values. And that surely is how you get to be a much stronger society.
Or an ethnically cleansed society, because obviously the number of people who are English, which is obviously a colonising influence in the UK as well, obviously coming from Germans, they're now, through the use of the globalists, ethnically cleansed themselves out of what was their homeland, their capital city, of both the UK and of England, what is now called the land of the Angles, which obviously was southern Celtic Britain.
And
so But Jeremy's just a product of the problem as well. He doesn't talk about the white working class. He's too busy with all the Islamofascists. And it doesn't really answer any questions that are put forward to him. So he's kidding on that refugees are welcome, but he's just like Brown and Tony Blair. He's just another gimp, even though he's from the communist gimp persuasion. He's just another gimp who's and basically wanting open door immigration, just like Georgie Porgy Galloway. But let's see. Galloway. Sorry. Oh. So, 3 days ago, George Galloway claims several Labour MPs will shortly defect to his party. Well, let's hear this. So this is an LBC.
I can confirm that there are several Labour members of Parliament, one Labour Lord, and I'm going to say dozens, at least a dozen, Labour councillors who will defect either this week or more probably next. It's a growing party. We've quadrupled in size since my victory in Rochdale, when, as you well know, I got more votes than all the other major parties put together.
Communism was created by a loser who created an ideology for losers, an ideology that caused destruction, death, poverty, wherever it was applied. And you may be asking yourself, why do people still support it? Why is there still people saying that communism is a good idea? And I'll give you the answer right now, because there's still a lot of losers out there. It's always going to blame somebody else for the problems that you have caused, for the problems that you have in your life. You're always going to be a victim. If you were born in a certain place, if you were born looking a certain way, you're always going to be a victim. There's no way to fix that. You need to be a victim. And that's why this system works in these people's minds, because they don't want to face the reality that they can actually change their lives.
Because they're losers.
That's brilliant. I just came across that. It was by accident. So let's go back to Georgie Porgy. So, here we go, 3 days ago, LBC again.
Hey, coaches and consultants, come here, check this out. I want to show you that you do not have to work with a ton of clients to make an incredible income. So, as you can see on the screen here,
with the Prime Minister again refusing to actually give an indication.
So this is with Nick Ferrari car.
As to the date of when the general election will be. Most people look towards late autumn or early winter, however you want to define November. And all the major parties, of course, are gearing up, ready for the fight. But so are some new parties as well. I speak of the Workers' Party of Britain, and later today, its leader and, of course, MP for Rochdale, George Galloway, will be, I think, united by some of his hoped-to-be, soon-to-be candidates. George Galloway joins me on the line now to explain more. Thanks for coming on, Mr.
The Workers' Party announced hundreds of candidates. Now, they're like the Reform Party, they're looking to stand in every seat. So the major advancement of the Workers' Party would be to have Uncle Albert. Now, don't forget, Jeremy Steptoe Corbyn is now out of the Labour Party. So the biggest threat, now let me just skip from this just for a second. He's got something, I was trying to look for it there. He's got a thing called the Peace and Justice. He's got the Global Movement for Justice. He's got something called the Peace and Justice Movement. There it is there, the Peace and Justice Project, which old Steptoe's in charge of. And Uncle Albert is the music for a ceasefire is heading to Leeds. So this is his project, founded by Jeremy Steptoe Corbyn, bringing together for social and economic justice, which means stealing your money and giving it to somebody else, peace and human rights, and in Britain and across the world. So there was a muted response to this becoming a political entity. But Georgie Porgy Galloway has said he would already step aside if Uncle Albert was prepared to actually take on and lead the Workers' Party. So the National Socialist Workers' Party of Great Britain, anti-Semitic in its nature, its core, but kidding on, it's not racist. To defund Israel, only Jewish state, but quite happy to allow Muslim atrocities to stand, not bothering about that, in Britain and outside. So not saying anything about them. But Uncle Albert, as a GIMP organisation, just like as a GIMP himself is, and a GIMP organisation like the Workers' Party, unless Uncle Albert chooses to create this peace and justice project, which seems pointless as a political party, where Georgie Porgy said he would step aside. He's already said he would step aside and let Corbyn stand. But if Corbyn stands for the Workers' Party as the lead, as the head of it, even more people are going to come to the Workers' Party. There's going to be MPs, like Georgie Porgy said, MPs there. Can we find that again? Can we find that again? Let me just see if I'm going to have to take a step back. Let's do that. Let's just take a step back. So Georgie Porgy's already claimed that...
I can confirm that there are several Labour members of Parliament.
So he's talking about Labour. I said up to 50 Labour, left-wing Labour MPs could join the Workers' Party. But if Uncle Albert, like if Nigel does it for Reform UK, if Uncle Albert joins the Workers' Party as the leader of the Workers' Party, and Georgie Porgy gets 650 MPs to stand, for them to stand, whether they're self-funding or getting funding through the Workers' Party, and Uncle Albert becomes the leader. This is going to have a dramatic and detrimental effect on the Labour Party. So you can imagine what effect if they manage to get this, and the same thing happens on the right side with Reform, who are just didn't come in second place against Labour at the Blackpool North. I'll come into that tomorrow. So they are. What are you guys saying anyway? You guys here? How are we doing? Keep in mind, I'm good, buddy. I'm good, Skull and Bones. How you doing, boss? All good this side, thanks. So let me just keep going as long as you can hear me. So if MPs leave the Conservative Party now, the Reform UK nearly overtook them, and if Nigel came back on the right and Jeremy Steptoe joined up with Georgie Porgy. Now Georgie Porgy and Jeremy were talking for the first time. They hadn't been communicating, but were talking on the back benches behind the SNP, where the SNP usually sit, and the back benches up there. Georgie Porgy Georgie Porgy maybe been kissing and making up, and Georgie Porgy was probably putting out feelers not just for Steptoe, and Steptoe will be the big one, even defections from as Labour MPs who will probably defect to the Workers' Party as they are more online with what Georgie Porgy's talking about. But even if Georgie Porgy stays, there won't be much of a change. But if Uncle Albert comes back, there's going to be a massive change. There's going to be a huge change, and the Workers' Party will probably get 650 MPs, and then all bets are off. Could see a reduction as in the Conservatives, a reduction in the Social Democratic Labour Party under a completely benign and magnolia candidate such as Sir Keir Starmer.
Parliament, one Labour Lord, and I'm going to say dozens, at least a dozen, Labour councillors who will defect either this week or more probably next. It's a growing party. We've quadrupled in size since my victory in Rochdale, when, as you well know, I got more votes than all the other major parties put together. Quite an achievement.
So that's incredible from that point of view as well. So let me just check this again. Right, so hello, hi Jambo, how you doing, buddy? So let's go for this.
You'll never make money by just working harder. Money is a reflection of your energy budget.
With the Prime Minister again refusing to actually give an indication as to the date of when the general election will be, most people look towards late autumn or early winter, however you want to.
Now, I'll come on tomorrow about my announcements about the local elections and whether or not wee Wallace and Gromit, the Indian Wallace and Gromit, will have to leave or not. And I'll talk about what actually happened in the local elections down south.
To define November, and all the major parties, of course, are gearing up ready for the fight, but so are some new parties as well. I speak of the Workers' Party of Britain, and later today, its leader and, of course, MP for Rochdale, George Galloway, will be, I think, united by some of his soon-to-be candidates. George Galloway joins me on the line now to explain more. Thanks for coming on, Mr. Galloway. My colleague Henry Riley reported this morning your talks with two big-name Labour MPs, Claudia Webb, who's former Labour, and Tahir Ali. Are they going to join your merry band, Mr. Galloway?
Well, I hope, actually, that several MPs will, and there's even a Lord. You might say, why would we accept a Lord, Nick? But there's a Labour Lord who is in talks with us, and dozens of Labour councillors, including some that were fighting. We hope that this growing coalition of people who reject the two cheeks of the same backside politics that we've got in Britain. And we hope to play the role vis-à-vis Labour that Mr Farage and the Reform Party are playing vis-à-vis the Tories. In other words...
See, I just said that, didn't I? Me and Georgie Porgy are on the same wavelength.
We hope to steal their breakfast, lunch and dinner.
What's your ambition? How many candidates do you hope to field, Mr Galloway?
I'm going to present 200 of them outside Parliament this afternoon, including, you'll like this, Monty Panesar, the ace Indian cricketer.
Yeah.
What's an Indian cricketer representing the UK for?
Former England international cricketer who will be our candidate in Southall. We've got a former Conservative UKIP member of Parliament, member of the European Parliament, I should say. So people from left, right and centre are rejecting the Tweedledee, Tweedledum politics. Some of them are very, very interesting indeed. Monty, of course, was a great left arm spinner. And so we could do with him, Nick.
OK, what is it about your policies, do you think, that's attracting people such as Monty who want to skittle out the opposition come the general election?
Very well put. You'll hear me say that at 2 o'clock. The reality is that we are, if you like, Labour shorn of identity politics, infatuation with race and gender, wokery and greenery and quackery. We are the real deal. We do what we say on the tin. We stand up for the working people. And you and I are also working people. If we lost our wages, salary this week, this month, we'd be in trouble. And that's the great majority of people in this.
So, back to what Georgie Porgy was saying there, if Uncle Albert not defected because he was already out of the Labour Party, so he's going to have to stand as an independent. But if he became the leader of the Workers' Party, and George obviously just continued to do what he's doing, if they solidified Uncle Albert would have a much greater devastating effect, just like Nigel coming back. He would have a much greater devastating effect, even in the other MPs that might come across. So,
island. Our country is falling apart at the seams, Nick. We can't even control who comes into it. We lose track of the people who do. Can't defend the English Channel while we're sailing gunboats in the Red Sea. It's all gone to pot. Not since 1941 have we been in such a state, and so far there's no Mr. Churchill to step into the breach.
You mentioned a Labour Lord, you mentioned some others. Mr. Galloway, any chance of any other names that you can share with me now?
I can't. If it was just you and me, I would, but you have a considerable audience, deservedly so.
So, I mean, we're really running out of time for this election, but the devastation, if George Porgy gets 650 MPs, Uncle Albert and Nigel are going to have to move just now. I don't know if Uncle Albert is that much of a political thinker. He keeps doing all these speeches in front of large crowds, but to actually, he's got to pull the trigger, and the pulling the trigger would be, he's already not a member of any political party. He might get re-elected by himself, he may or may not, but he's going to be a lot stronger if he heads up the Workers' Party and becomes the leader of the Workers' Party. That they'll probably get the 650 MPs, and then if Nigel and what's his face, Richard Tice actually have got the 650 MPs, you're going to see a massive squeeze on the wokey left or centre. Go on, Georgie.
So I won't, if you'll forgive me. It's not seemly, but I can confirm that there are several Labour members of Parliament, one Labour Lord, and I'm going to say dozens, at least
2 French hens, 3 turtle doves.
A dozen Labour councillors who will defect either this week or more probably next. It's a growing party. We've quadrupled in size since my victory in Rochdale, when, as you well know, I got more votes than all the other major parties put together. Quite an achievement.
At the time, you were quoted as saying, "I despise the Prime Minister." Now you've had the opportunity to see him at closer quarters within the House. Have you changed your view in any way?
Well, he's no bigger a figure in reality than he seemed on television. He's only been in Parliament, I think, a few years, and he won't be there for very much longer, so I don't expect to get to know him. In fact, I'm looking at my watch now. I'm wondering if Penny Mordaunt will unseat him before business questions on Thursday. He's not much...
Well, I think on that note, just we'll come back to, where is that? We'll come back to this one in a second, but let's have a look at Penny Mordaunt.
If you're a web designer, here are 4 Wix Studio features you gotta know.
I think we should have a festive roundup.
So I think this is from The Sun. Let me just give them... Oh no, The Telegraph. The Telegraph.
Mr. Speaker, on SNP morality. 12 hours of police questioning, 11 grand roaming charges, 10 years without school inspections, 9 sham embassies, 8 years of poor child mental health, 7 years without ferries, 6 years shirking welfare powers, 500 million overspent on Edinburgh's tram, 4 million to install a heat pump, 3 high-profile arrests, 2 overseas jollies, and a dodgy Jaguar EV. I thank the Honourable Lady. I have succeeded in bringing a smile to her face, and I must thank her for being the gift that keeps on giving at business questions.
Yeah, that wasn't the one I was wanting to show you. What was that? SNP. Let's see, SNP. Oh, here we go. No, I don't think this is it either.
Mr. Speaker, may I associate myself with the remarks about the...
So this is the son.
Welsh First Minister, and also pass on my very best wishes to former First Minister Mark Drakeford. Now, of course, we are grateful to the leader for making time in her hectic schedule to pop along to the House of Commons today. All that leadership, plotting and scheming doesn't just happen by itself. She's been a busy bee. We can only pray we are nearing the season finale of this endless Tory soap opera. But her leadership campaign hasn't stopped her coming here today, so she can ignore our questions in person. Every Thursday, she displays some essential qualities to be the next Tory Prime Minister. For a start, regarding questions as a bit of a new...
There's a consistent hostility and unpleasantness in the Honourable Lady's questions towards me, and this has been going on for some time, weeks in fact, Mr. Speaker. I'm getting the impression the Honourable Lady does not like me, perhaps even hates me, and her followers on social media certainly do, and there are some patronising undertones in what she says, and I believe she is saying that I'm deficient in my abilities to answer her questions, perhaps because I am a woman. I feel very intimidated, upset.
That's not what I want to hear either. That's not it. Where are you? Come on. Oh, maybe she was getting somewhere with that. Maybe I should have kept that going. Let's see it. Let's filter this. There was something good about her. Where was this? Update date. I don't think that was it. No, that's not it. Where is that? That is so annoying. Blast sloppy. Nah, come on, Penny Humza. No, this is really bad. No, it's obviously there's something funny she said. I can't remember what it was. Let's see if we can get it on this. She just said that brutal response, Angela Mayer. Oh no, I can't see it. She said something funny anyway. Anyway, we'll just need to continue with Georgie Porgy. Carry on, George.
Regarded in the country, certainly not elected by the country to be our Prime Minister, and I suspect he's here today but gone tomorrow.
Will Sir Keir Starmer make a better Prime Minister, Mr. Galloway?
I think he'll be worse than Tony Blair, who was the last worst. Tony Blair without the laughs, without the polish, without the style, the panache. He's so wooden, the birds are nesting in him. I'm sure I've seen that. He doesn't inspire anyone. No one at all would go to the barricades for him. He is in the position he's in purely because of the catastrophic failures of the Conservative government, which show all the signs of losing the will, politically speaking, to live. You and I have been here before. We saw the John Major government look exactly like this and prey to every scandal, although some of the scandals of recent weeks have been off the scale, off the charts. You know, I'm in a room with bad people, send me £5,000. Even John Major didn't have to deal with that one.
Finally, is it correct that the Workers' Party will not stand in Islington North, of course the seat currently held by Jeremy Corbyn, and if that's correct...
See, we're getting to it now. We're getting to the end of the wedge.
Why would that be, Mr. Galloway?
That is correct. We think that Jeremy Corbyn has been particularly badly treated by...
Oh, there you go. It's all getting teed up for me being correct, but he would have to move just now. Uncle Albert would have to move just now. Same with Nigel. The time is running in. If we're only talking about 6 months, the time for a decisive move would have to be now, and only now for Nigel and Jeremy Corbyn to join with the Workers' Party and Reform as leaders. Only at that point could you actually break the back of the wokey wefter politics.
Keir Starmer, and it wouldn't be right to try to do anything that would damage his ability to hold the seat as an independent, as I presume he will seek to do. There are one or two, maybe more than one or two, but not that many, other outstanding independents against whom we may not stand. But you can say at this stage, it is our intention to stand in every parliamentary seat in Britain.
Wow, so that's just the same as the Reform. This is the first time you're going to have, I think, two parties, both in the left and centre-right, to actually stand all over the UK at the same time. And we saw last night in Blackpool North that UK Reform only came within 100 votes of becoming the second party in that constituency, almost right from the off. Don't forget, I think the Brexit Party stood down in the last time, so this is the first general election that Reform UK has actually stood. Same with the Workers' Party. Although there's been individual candidates standing, there's not been a complete slate for both the Reform and the Workers' Party, which is going to be fascinating. Oh, there you guys are there. Hello there. Hi there. How you doing? What's happening, guys? How do you have an ad deal with YouTube? I'm not quite sure how I have an ad deal with YouTube. I doubt Galloway will let Corbyn in. He's already said, the press and journalist, he's already said that he would stand aside. There's other, if you look back on previous videos of him talking about it, because I brought it up. If you look at the video on my page on YouTube at the top, I already brought up that he would do that. So unlike Richard Tice, who's not said he would stand down, and probably he's not said he'd stand down because Nigel has not been firm on him coming back, I think that well, I know the fact that George has said that he would stand down for Jeremy Corbyn, and he would become his second place to Jeremy Corbyn. Galloway and Farage have a lot in common. They've certainly got certain things in common, yeah, definitely. Not to mention they could break the back of the wokey wefter parties. They both like being top dog, yeah. And I think Richard would stand down because it's in Richard's interest, because it's actually like as it was in the Brexit Party's interest to stand down candidates at the last election to allow the Conservatives in. Sometimes you have to take a back seat, and it would be in Richard Tice's long-term interest if Nigel was to come back as an MP, as the leader in the next 6 months, to actually stand down. Baby boxes, but the baby boxes. Yeah, I know. God, man, naughty girl. So that kept popping up on your streams. Ad spam keeps popping up in your streams, does it? Oh my God. So you can't do anything about that, guys. I'm limited. So far we've made our first £80, I think, over all of the videos we put up on YouTube. So a momentous day. Unlike Alex Salmond's, well, we're not really making any money because we spent a fortune on getting everything to this standard, to get the actual green screen working to this, well, it's a blue screen, but the blue screen working with new lights, new soap boxes. We spent a fortune just to actually get it lit properly, proper sound, just to actually professionalise the whole setup. We've totally changed it as well. But yeah, the press and journalist, Galloway's already said, if you look back on previous speeches from, I think, the Workers' Party website, I've already actually covered this before in some of my previous previous commentary that George Galloway said himself that he would stand down for Jeremy Corbyn, and he's correct to do so, and it's clever by George as well, because by stepping down, it will be a tremendous fight between the left and the centre of Labour. So it's the first time that the left of Labour has got somewhere coherent and potentially winnable to go from the actual Labour Party, the Social Democrats and the Labour Party. And this could see, just like the Conservative Reform, a Workers' Party Labour split from the left and obviously the centre left. So he did say he would do it, just to answer your question. As I think, and although this has not been concluded, that Richard Tice would probably do it as well. Let's see if there's anything more about this. Let's see if I can do it by time period. I don't understand why that doesn't work. Try a different or remove search filters. So I don't know why that doesn't work, and we can't get the thing up. Oh, here we go. This is great. This right. Let's see Commie News.
We're living in an age of technological.
So this is Navarra Media. This is obviously anti-white, racist communists.
Where every industry is being upended.
George Galloway intends for his Workers' Party to run a full slate of candidates across almost 650 parliamentary seats up for grabs at the next general election. With currently only one MP, himself, that might seem like Galloway has a long way to go. But the Workers' Party has taken a giant leap towards that goal by unveiling 200 new parliamentary candidates today. This was Galloway describing the party's new candidates outside Parliament.
We have assembled in such a short time a remarkable team.
There's one white guy there at the back.
Which is going to change this election. You should look at it this way. I speak really to the media here. We will have the same impact on Labour that Mr. Farage and the Reform Party are likely to have on the Conservatives. In other words, we will win seats, but in potentially hundreds of seats, we will materially affect the result. As I think you'll find is going to happen in the West Midlands mayoral election on Thursday, and maybe elsewhere in local authority results. The truth is, there's a huge number of people in Britain who are fed up with the two cheeks of the same backside. They don't find either cheek any more attractive than the other, and they're not prepared to vote for the backsides that are presented to us as the best that we can have. We say Britain deserves better than the dwarfish political class that leads the opposition in Britain.
I find it quite amusing how sort of Galloway got lost in his metaphor there. You know, Britain deserves a better backside, a better cheek. Anyway, amongst the new Workers' Party parliamentary candidates are two former UK ambassadors, former members of the UK and European parliaments, and former Labour councillors. But they have one star candidate in particular. Monty Panesar is a former England cricketer who will be contesting the Ealing Southall seat. The Luton-born spin bowler played 50 test matches for England between 2006 and 2013. He was the 2007 Wisden Cricketer of the Year and won 3 Ashes series against the Aussies. Not many English people can say that. The seat he is running for is currently held by Labour's Virendra Sharma, who has been the constituency MP since 2007 and importantly won a 16,000 vote majority in 2019. And it's likely that Ealing Southall won't be the only Labour stronghold to feel the pinch from the Workers' Party. Speaking to LBC, Galloway outlined his party's pitch.
The reality is that we are, if you like, Labour shorn of identity politics, infatuation with race and gender, wokery and greenery and quackery. We are the real deal. we do what we say on the tin. We stand up for the working people. And you and I are also working people. If we lost our wages, salary this week, this month, we'd be in trouble. And that's the great majority of people in this island. Our country is falling apart at the seams, Nick. We can't even control who comes into it. We lose track of the people who do. Can't defend the English Channel while we're sailing gunboats in the Red Sea. It's all gone to pot. Not since 1941 have we been in such a state. And so far, there's no Mr. Churchill to step into the breach.
Interesting analogy there. Because if Starmer isn't Mr. Churchill, presumably George Galloway thinks George Galloway is Mr. Churchill. Anyway, I
think he probably thinks Jeremy Corbyn's Mr. Churchill.
Lines are going to appeal to a lot of people fed up with politically driven culture wars. But there's also the risk they'll appeal to people who are actually racist, homophobic, and climate skeptics. Though perhaps Galloway doesn't see that as much of a risk. Amongst his new candidates is former UKIP member and Tory candidate Harry Boota. In 2016, he was suspended from the party after suggesting that homosexuality stemmed from childhood sexual abuse. According to Galloway, some Labour politicians are already sensitive.
But Aaron, what about Islam? Islam wants to kill homosexuals, but you never mention that. Why do you not do that, Aaron? Is it because you're a communist? The communists have killed 100 million people in various different countries, and you and the girl with the moustache, Ash, whatever her name is, said that they were quite happy about the ethnic cleansing of London. You were quite supportive. You were winning. So you obviously are pretty racist, but you just choose which race that you're quite happy supporting or being racist to. Is that correct?
Seeing new opportunities at the Workers' Party.
I can confirm that there are several Labour members of Parliament, one Labour Lord, and I'm going to say dozens at least.
Galloway wouldn't reveal any names in the interview that followed. And very quickly afterwards, Tahir Ali issued a statement unequivocally rejecting claims that he's in talks about defecting from the Labour Party. So far, Claudia Webb hasn't commented on those claims. Galloway has also promised that his party won't run candidates against what he calls outstanding independents. And he's named Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott as MPs who won't be challenged by the Workers' Party if they run as independents in the upcoming general election. There's no doubt that Galloway is a persuasive figure, but it's unclear whether that's going to translate into parliamentary seats for his party. Helena, now, what do you make of the Workers' Party's slate of candidates and their prospects of being elected? Galloway may be there after the next general election, but will he be joined by anyone else?
Well, if we look at his kind of broader policy prospectus, the kind of, I guess we've not really seen like specific policies. We've got the kind of the general vibes of the kind of issues that he's looking to run on. What do you kind of broadly have? Economically, kind of, I guess, social democratic, even though they have some other four kind of left-wing elements of the party as well. When you look at the kind of things they campaign on, broadly social democratic. In terms of social policy, he's clearly marketing himself and the party as being like part of the anti-woke ticket. He's been things like anti-migration in terms of things like net zero policies, talking about catastrophizing green alarmism in terms of the way people discuss things like green policy. When it comes to foreign policy, it's broadly, I guess, campist is the way you would describe it. In terms, I mean, this is about it openly supports any foreign dictator as long as they are opposed to Western interests, regardless of the veracity of whether or not they're a good leader. And I don't see where the coalition of voters is bought by this particular set of policy prescriptions, right? Like, if you want to, I think there's a space open. I think many people have admitted at this point that for a kind of left-wing party in terms of the economy that also can campaign on towards kind of more authoritarian social policy. But there are so many different parts of his prospectus that would put off anybody from loads of these different camps. For example, if you're part of the kind of the anti-woke voters who want to, get rid of all of the discussions of identity politics, even though they seem to be the people themselves who are the most obsessed with it, Paul, but regardless, these are also the kind of people who will be super put off by anybody who might undermine British defence by supporting people who are technically opposed to Western political interests globally. So that's broadly the reason why Corbyn lost so much support from 2017 to 2019, was this expose of him as being a fan of Hezbollah and Hamas, for example. Obviously, nonsense claims, but that's the claim that Rishi Sunak made about George Galloway that could be used to undermine that particular voting cohort. And those of us come from a socialist perspective, for example, on the economy, would immediately get put off by the kind of climate skepticism, those kind of claims that you've seen from him in regards to policy as well. So there's not a broad coalition there either. Very funny that one of his candidates that spoke at his launch event there talked about, we need to bring back industry to the deindustrialized areas of the north and those kind of areas. And I'm like, yeah, I 100% agree, but that's not coming back in terms of just regular commodity production. That's long gone. The industries of the future are going to be large-scale green investment. And if you're going to be a anti-net zero party, or at least be a skeptical of net zero, then where's the investment going to come for these jobs, which are going to have to be green jobs? And this doesn't make sense either. And on top of that, if you're going to be part of this kind of socially conservative background, how are you ever going to get the broad support of the kind of Corbyn era of politics, who are broadly incredibly socially progressive, which is diametrically opposed to the kind of politics that George Galloway represents? As for the candidates, Monty Panesar is certainly somebody who I have a lot to agree with. I think he's good on climate change. He's good on things like mental health. I'm a big fan of him on the cricket field as well. But outside of that, it doesn't look like they've got many kind of people with huge amounts of star quality other than people who were on MEPs however many years ago. So really and truly, I don't see the route to which Galloway can have broad enough appeal or broad enough star quality to actually win that many seats at the next election.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Come on. So the left, so these guys are going to vote for Wokey Wefter, Magnolia Man, Sir Keir Starmer. So, these guys are obviously just Wokey Wefters.
I don't think they're going to win many seats. I think George Galloway keeping his seat would be an extraordinary accomplishment. It's very unusual. It just shows you how the extreme left are just gimps. Basically, they're just gimps. Globalist Islamo-Marxist party. They're Wokey Wefters. To win a seat in a by-election as a non-legacy party and to keep it.
It just shows you that Baldy Dr. Evil in Davos, he's got a picture, a bust, I think, of Lenin in the background. So when he's orchestrating like Bugs Bunny face, Horsey face, Jacinda Ardern, and we nippies want to be just like Jacinda because they've all bought into Baldy Dr. Evil in Davos. It's communism from the top down, and it's affected all of our political parties. Obviously, there's not going to be a differentiation, and the left has lost itself between. And I don't understand how, even if the UK went into the sea and there was no more CO2, that it's not going to make a blind bit of difference on the overall expulsion of CO2 in the atmosphere. China puts out more CO2 in 1 year than the whole of the British Industrial Revolution today. So none of the stuff that they say makes sense. It's just a lot of bullshit.
If they add to it, I think if they got 2 seats, that would just be mind-boggling, And I think the big challenge really with Galloway, looking at the experience of Respect, the political party he was involved in response to the Iraq War, is can they keep it up? If this is going to be a coherent political formation, which has 2 seats after the general election, and then they have, a bunch of second places, a bunch of third places, they'll contest those again in the election thereafter. You can become a national political party. That's possible.
That would obviously stand, and I don't know, because that's obviously a direct challenge to something like the Greens in Scotland. So Georgie Porgy, if he loses his seat in Westminster, may stand in Scotland with the Workers' Party. And on the list, depending on what sort of return, and if Uncle Albert comes back as well, he might actually get elected potentially on the list, as may Alex Salmond, because if he's first on the list, which I suspect he will be, depending on what sort of numbers the Albert Party get. I don't know why we're speaking Irish in Scotland, or why it's called Scotland now. I've actually now come completely changed my whole perception on this. Why we named after an Irish tribe when the Britons from Strathclyde were here and speaking Brittonic before Ireland or what's Scottish Gaelic, which is basically a dialect of Irish, was spoken here. Doesn't make any sense. It's like we would be speaking Norse for all the guys who invaded from Norway. Not that we've got any big problems on an ethnic basis on that, but just from a cultural point of view, why are we speaking German and Irish when Brythonic is the actual original language in the UK?
With Galloway, history indicates that he's like a shooting star. You see him, but then he sort of disappears from view. That may not be the case this time, but that's the tendency we've seen historically. Also on the opportunists.
So George is going to be a big threat to the Green Party, because obviously I would take it, although obviously the Greens were meant to be for independence, but the Greens also said they would work with Labour. So and they removed the independence thing from the Greens. The Scottish Greens moved the independence thing from the last annual meeting with about 20 people in it.
Sort of label he gets.
So George, the Workers' Party, will probably fight for votes in that same section for the Scottish Parliament.
This is what I find particularly interesting with Galloway, is that on certain issues, he is absolutely principled. He was involved in Dundee politics when Dundee twinned with Nablus in Palestine in, I think, 1980. That was part of his initiative in Dundee. So he's clearly cared about Palestine and the politics of that region for decades. I don't think he's what they call a grifter. I don't think he's a grifter on Palestine at all, actually. But there are some other areas where, I do think he's very opportunistic. So very high integrity on some things, and I think the opposite on others, which is unusual, right? People are either one or the other. There's one sure sign that George Galloway is set to be a disruptive force against centrist politics, however, and that is because the media is already spooked. On Good Morning Britain, Galloway was asked about remarks he once made about Saddam Hussein. Oh, the answer is George Galloway. For the record, what he's saying about Saddam and those very famous comments now about indefatigability, at the time they were misreported. From what I've seen, subsequent reportage, Galloway's own comments in 2004, he was making those comments about the Iraqi people. He did protest the conduct of the Iraqi government in the 1980s, and he was very critical of both the US and the UK supporting Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war. So I think Madley's being very unfair there. But with Richard Madley KO'd, it was the turn of Susanna Reid to have a go.
What was the last thing you bought on Amazon? Have you ever wondered who you bought?
This is liquid Galloway. This banality, this triviality. And then he talks about the 2007 Wisden Cricketer of the Year, Monty Panesar, who will be standing for his new party. He keeps things interesting. Look, there's so much to talk about here. I think actually it is pretty remarkable that of all the politicians attacked for their political positioning in regards to Iraq, he opposed the sanctions on that country, which, by the way, destroyed Iraq in the early 1990s. And he opposed the 2003 invasion. Of all the politicians to criticise in this country with regards to their position on Iraq, Galloway would absolutely be at the back of the queue, unless, of course, you work for the British media. And let's see where things went next.
British National Party is still going. Now, bear in mind, there's something like over 4,000 parties that are registered with the Electoral Commission. So there's a number of political parties, but I don't know if the British National Party is a political entity. I've never seen them recently. There's a bit of worrying correlation between the Catholic Church and Islam about unholy practices towards children, is there not, Georgie Porgy?
I like Susanna Reid, but these people make absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
If Tommy Robinson said you were his favourite presenter, or Nick Griffin said he was your favourite presenter, what would you do? I would absolutely reject what? Reject the assertion that you're their favourite TV presenter? What?
But would you reject the murder and the child rape of Islam over 1,400 years? Would you reject that? That's something that I don't know if you've rejected, Darren. Don't know.
On earth are you talking about? And I have to say, I know that Galloway elicits all kind of responses from all kinds of people on different issues to different extents. Like everybody has an opinion on George Galloway, right? He's one of those people, a bit like Farage. But I have to say, him going after the media and going after the political establishment and the way he's talking about...
I can't imagine anybody doing that.
...the country being in freefall is incredibly popular. I don't agree with what he's saying about border control and small boats, etc. I don't agree with that.
I see. So you're an open border champion, are you? So you just believe that anybody should come here, and so you, like the libertarian right, the anarcho-capitalist right, and the anarcho-communist left, seem to meet in the circularity of ideological inspiration and just think anybody can come here. So, like in the anarcho-capitalist right, that we don't have any social services, so that if people want to come here, they have to work for what they get. And on the anarcho-communist left, anybody can come here and property, so we can all give up our property to live in a big absolute mess.
But there'll be many, many people who are actually looking at reform who think this guy's talking lots of sense. Now, are they going to vote for the Workers' Party? I don't think so. But it's going to recalibrate the political conversation.
It's not just going to recalibrate the political conversation. It's going to recalibrate the numbers. And while the Reform Party is already taken down and reduced the size of the Conservative Party to the extent where they might be beating them, whether or not in the next 6 months, if Rishi Sunak takes it, which is going to be a godsend for Rishi Sunak, if George Galloway and if Jeremy Corbyn joins, then there'll be a recalibration of the left, and whether or not it's enough time to actually prevent a massive Labour win, and whether both Reform and the Workers' Party can actually target the soft Labour vote to reduce the overall size in the Labour victory, or even get to the stage of a hung Parliament, which is going to make both the SNP, the Workers and the Reform UK positions very strong, as well as potentially the Liberals. Very strong. So it's all to play for, especially if they get 650 MPs.
To a significant extent. George Galloway wasn't finished, though. After that interview, he posted this. If I believed everything I read on the internet, I'd think Richard Madley stole 2 bottles of champagne and was a shoplifter. He isn't. He just forgot to pay for them. If there's a person that knows libel law in this country, it's George Galloway. He sued the newspapers enough times.
Whoa, interesting. So, what have we got here? Claudia Webb, here we go. This is what we're talking about.
So it looks like...
Let me just give a shout out to these guys. Save the UK Labour Party. Save the UK Labour Party. Here we go.
Claudia Webb will join the Workers' Party of Great Britain.
Oh!
And that is because she's been politically homeless for some time now.
As is Diane Abbott, as is Jeremy Corbyn.
She got kicked out of the Labour Party because she had threatened...
She should have had a recall. Why she's never had a recall, I don't know.
And she sent these kind of threatening texts to a woman who was sleeping with her husband. And now it looks like she will join a Workers' Party. Why is that? Because she's been sitting as an independent for some time. She got kicked out, and she agrees with Galloway on a lot of issues, one of them being Palestine. Galloway, I'm not sure if you saw it today, but it was a big announcement that the Workers' Party had today. They were saying, we're going to stand a ton of candidates. They've got an ex-cricketer now on board with their campaign. Will they make gains this national election? Who knows? But like I said in the last video, the Workers' Party does have national ambitions. It had when I was part of it, and it has, and I can only tell that those have grown already. I'm in contact with 1 or 2 people involved in it, but I don't really need to be. I can just watch it on the news, and it's obviously propping up now. So yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening at the moment. They've already got a councillor defected to them, a Labour Party councillor. So now they have one MP and one councillor. Okay, they've got...
So that means they could have 2 MPs with Claudia Webb, a very undesirable individual. Diane Abbott, potentially, which would be quite a big scalp. And Uncle Albert. So that's 4 MPs that they could have before the next election even starts. Wow.
George Galloway, and they got a councillor. And if they can get...
And don't forget, Alba's got a number of MPs and an MSP already from defections as well.
Courtney Webb on board, they'll have 2 MPs. And that's actually quite important, I think, because although 2 MPs can't do anything, it does give them a presence within Parliament. It does say, oh, okay, this is a political party with 2 MPs, not just 1 MP, because we see political parties with 1 MP, they're just counted as independents. When a party has 2, 3, 4 MPs, it is then counted as a political party, if you see what I mean. On election broadcasts, it's able to get their message across a bit better. If he is able to get Claudia Webb to defect, that is very, very useful for the Workers' Party. It's a win. It's a win for them. And I believe that they will give Claudia Webb a deal as well. Of course, as she has no party, they can give her a deal. They can say, well, join us and we've got a home for you. We can help you. We can help you in your general election campaign, for example. It is helpful if you're an MP being part of a political party. Of course, a lot of MPs...
And that's why Jeremy Corbyn might well join them.
He's, deliberately independent. But I have been following Claudia Webb for some time now in the news, because I've been interested to see where she's been thinking of going. When Chris Williamson started his political party, which was very short-lived, I was very interested to see whether he would try and get her on board with that. And now Chris Williamson has joined a Workers' Party. I do believe it's a lot more likely that Claudia Webb will join a Workers' Party, especially now that they have more contacts in Parliament. Of course, Galloway has a lot of contacts anyway, but he has been able to grow in his influence. There's no doubt about it. And this election will be interesting to see whether they will be able to get potentially, for example, Police and Crime Commissioner elected for them. Every little for them counts because they're such a small party, but they're growing. You see, this is the same with the SDP, and this is why I'll keep going back to these 2 parties, because they both have national ambitions, and that doesn't change for them. They have national ambitions, and they're going to try and get people elected on the mayoral election, in the mayoral elections, police and crime commissioners, councillors, and of course MPs. So yes, I do believe there is a huge potential she will defect to the Workers' Party, unless she gets an opportunity with another party. Of course, a lot of people on the left, they wanted Corbyn to make a new party, a Corbynista party. That never happened. So yeah, obviously,
and now he's got a ready-made party. He doesn't need to. Jeremy Corbyn doesn't need to have a Corbynista party. He just has to slip in to the Workers' Party
as the Peace and Justice Project. But of course, a lot of people...
that's what I told you about earlier on. The Peace and Justice Party, totally pointless. If Jeremy Corbyn could step in as leader to the Workers' Party, it's all set up for him. Why would you have to set up another party? It's stupid.
On the left, they want more. Of course, the Socialist Campaign Group...
It's like the Socialist Workers' Party, the Workers' Party, the Socialist Party, the Scottish Socialist Party. I mean, it's like the People's Front and the People's Front of Judea.
Faction within the Labour Party. A lot of people have been calling for something further. And of course...
So I said there's up to 50 MPs on the left who could join Georgie Porges Galloway, especially with Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, Webb potentially going as well. well. These would be high-profile scalps in the next 6 months, which would have a major dent in Labour, which would reduce the potential overall input of Labour, just as the Reform UK Party is having a dent in the Conservatives.
The Workers' Party is unpopular in terms of their policies when it comes to anti-woke and the kind of more socially conservative aspect of that. That's quite unpopular.
Well, it's not unpopular up here. I think everybody should be anti-woke.
With the left wing in Labour and surrounding Labour, I'm talking about people like Owen Jones, that kind of strand within the left.
So they're all, Owen Jones has joined the Green Party because they're all doughballs as well.
Very unpopular amongst them.
So you've got a resurgent Green Party as well, which was standing in a lot of constituencies. I'll come on to that tomorrow. Standing in a lot of constituencies down south, and the Green Party are increasingly increasing their strength across the UK. Although it's like the Village Idiots Party, but yeah, so that's again another challenge to Labour.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, basically. But
they're the wokey wafter party. They're just another form of wokey waftery.
I think there is a huge potential that Claudia Webb will defect to the Workers' Party.
Well, that's going to be another disaster for Keir Starmer, isn't it? They've now got something to coalesce round, which is going to be very interesting for them. What do you guys say? But the baby boxes, naughty girl. Ab spam keeps popping up on your stream, doesn't it? Oh, check George mail order, right? Bastani vaxxed, aye. We don't know if Bastani's vaxxed. Notice we are not allowed to speculate about the green agenda. But Hurt Bastani, that was a belter the other day when you chapped the door. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much, mate. Alan Partridge. It just shows you that they all talk about freedom of the press, but if you're not the right sort of press, there's not any freedom, doesn't it? I was thinking about that just the other night there. So unless you're part of the gang, freedom of the press only relates to the freedom of the press that they've decided that are the press. So us guerillas are not part of the actual press. So let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to talk about the election tomorrow. Election results in full. Nightmare night for Sunak as Tories suffer 120 losses and Reform UK celebrate inroads into the Brexit heartlands. Go over that tomorrow. Which I think is much more serious. None of this is any of your... Oh, what's going on here? Am I actually live? This is the question. Oh, no. What's going on? Oh, I'm live. Oh my goodness. It's an absolute disaster. What's going on? Thanks very much, guys, for all the likes and the support. The channel's going from strength to strength. Let's get rid of that.
They're socialists.
Here we go.
I invented the word con-socialist because that's who they are.
Well, I think I said that, to be honest with you. Everybody's claiming credit. It was me that came up. Look, 3 years ago, have you got... Who's the guy? Alex Salmond. Who was the guy that's claiming credit? Alex Salmond. Who's Alex Salmond with? Alex Salmond was on something. Paste. Let's see, Alex Salmond. I'll tell you which one. There it is there. So this guy. So I had this fellow here. What's his face? Mike Graham of what is this? Independent Republican Mike Graham. And he's claiming credit for coming up with the word hums are useless. And who was the other? Dan Wooten from GB News. Dan Wooten, yeah, from GB News, right? Said he came up with the hums are useless tag. But let's see who actually came up with it 3 years ago. Oh, look, here we go. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is, 3 years ago. Hums are useless. There it is there. Show us yours, Mike Graham. 3 years ago. Or Dan Wooten. I think there's even older ones that I was calling them hums are useless. So it's good though the fact that they're actually listening to me down in the British media, and they actually take what I say and then use it for their own, which I guess is complimentary for myself. So let's go for the other side. Let's go for reform. What are we talking about? So let's get rid of him. Keep that for tomorrow. Get rid of that. Here we go. Let's see what nice guy Eddie Richard Tice is saying.
So no, they're both a disaster. I'm sticking to the plan. We're not doing a deal with socialists.
Well, joining me now to discuss Reform's electoral gains is Richard Tice, who's leader of Reform UK. Good afternoon, Richard.
Good afternoon. Yes, well, it was our best ever by-election result. We're delighted with that. And onwards and upwards. And also what it did was put paid to those who said we could never match our sort of national polling in an actual election where we significantly...
Yeah, let me just get you this. So, Carol Benjamin. So, Carol's correct here. Let's... if you've not signed up to the Lotus Eaters, go up and sign up. Let's see, where is he? Carol Benjamin. Here we go. So this is it here. How is it possible that the Conservative vote can collapse so catastrophically and yet Reform has so far gained absolutely zero councillors? Again, I'll come on to this tomorrow as well. So the Labour up three councils and 54 councillors, which isn't great. The illiberal Liberals up 18. Zero councils, more councils won. The Conservatives down 3, but down 124. So that they're not, the other centrist political parties aren't taking it. Independents and others up 13. Even the Doughballs and the Greens are up 13 councillors. So again, this is going to be a big issue. And yet, even the Residents Association has managed to pick up 5 councillors. Now, I don't understand why Reform UK wasn't just putting councillors up willy-nilly. I would even vetted the councillors at this stage. I would have just got them up and taken any bad publicity with it on the chin, because you needed the maximum amount of candidates up just now, especially going in for this general election. Don't get me wrong, Reform are just behind the Conservatives, less than 100 votes behind the Conservatives in a parliamentary election for an MP. So, and to get into second place, so they were doing something right. But again, Carol's correct on the back of this.
Exceeded that within a sort of a hair's whisker of defeating the Tories into second place.
So do you think you're an existential threat to the Tories now at the general election?
Well, we're going to be standing in 630 seats, and we're going to be putting forward a bold, clear agenda. There's no difference between the main two parties. It's ridiculous that the Tories saying you're just going to let Labour in. They're both the same. Socialists, high tax, high wasteful government spending, mass immigration, collapse of law and order, pro the job-destroying net zero. All of this is leading to the longest recession per person in 70 years. And nothing.
And I would say corporatist as well. Corporatist, not capitalist.
Labour does will be any different. It's a catastrophe.
I think it's
because that's what socialism always is.
It was probably the first and last time that Rishi Sunak's been called a socialist. I mean, that's sort of laughable.
I've been calling it. It's not laughable. They've raised taxes, Kathy, to the highest level for 70 years. They've raised government spending to the highest level.
And that's because the WEF don't want Brexit Britain to work. That's why they're doing this. They're spending things and stupid things like the lockdowns. They deliberately did the lockdowns for 2 years to destroy the British economy, to destroy small businesses. And this was done by the Wokey Wefters. And don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer is a Wokey Wefter as well. He's already pledged his allegiance to Gordon Brown, Tony Blair. Tony Blair, Gordon... Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were over at Davos taking their orders and telling Sir Keir Starmer what's going to happen from Baldy Dr. Evil.
For 70 years. We've just been through the lowest growth decade for 70 years. That's not what conservative economic principles are supposed to be about. That's socialism, literally by definition.
So you plan to stand in 600 plus seats in the general election, but can you really win any? I mean, you haven't even won a councillor yet, have you?
Oh no, we have. We've won council seats. We've got
Again, both the Workers' Party and Reform. It's first. I mean, I understand why she's asking this. Kathy thinks asking this question, but I mean, to have never stood in a full slate of MPs. I mean, I don't remember a few years ago any or to this day any party standing full slates of 650 candidates, both for the Workers' Party and Reform, against the main three parties. I think this is the first time that this has actually ever happened. So, as far as I can remember, I don't know how many UKIP actually stood, but and I don't know if they stood a full slate, but this could be the first time two political parties from the left and the centre right have actually stood.
GLA assembly elections.
Sorry, I'm talking
tomorrow.
about in this election today.
And look, I've no doubt at all we will be winning seats.
When you click here, you'll discover how you could instantly tap into a 164
in the general election. And just because we've got a flawed electoral system here, first past the post, you may say, yes, it's tough on the way up, but also it's brutal on the way down. And the Tories are sinking fast, so fast that, as you touched on, John Curtis is saying they could be annihilated. Well, given what they've done to the country, frankly, they don't deserve any mercy.
So you genuinely think you could replace the Conservatives as the sort of centre-right party, or right party, I should say?
Well, we're seeing in the north, in some of these council elections, for example, in Sunderland, we beat the Conservatives in 16 out of 25 wards. In Barnsley, we beat the Conservatives in 9 out of 10 wards where we stood. Again, where we're polling sort of 19%. So in the north, actually, we are beginning to become the opposition to the Labour Party. And look,
and so that's from the right, and George Galloway is going to come from the left. So really, the Labour Party are now going to be in a pincer movement from the left and the right, which is going to be an incredible situation.
Rome's not built in a day, but this is a journey. It's for the medium term. And yeah, I actually think the country is better off when there's more alternatives in democracy, more debate about different views, as opposed to a sort of duopoly.
So this is from the Radio Times, this interview
we've currently got, where actually you can't tell a fag paper between the two of them.
Times Radio, not Radio Times. I don't know if Times Radio is the Times newspaper's digital arm. I don't know.
How many Westminster seats do you really think you can win, given that, I repeat, you haven't won any councillors yet in these local elections? I know you have in the past, but...
Well, exactly. We have in the past as many as possible. All you're doing, Kathy, is making my point for me that our...
all the results are not in just now, but even to move in, see, this being the first real council elections, even to move into second place, if you're talking about the long game for both the Workers' Party and also Reform, you're even if you go into second place, eventually you'll move up because the main party, or the whatever party is in power at that time, will eventually lose its position in a democracy. So either the Workers' Party or Reform will increase the vote to overtake at this point. Although I think Richard is getting brought in by these sort of questions. It really doesn't matter to get into second place. I know Richard's wanting to get as high as he is going to get, but even getting into second place on your first elections, no mean feat. To be better, even if he doesn't win any MPs, it's still now an alternative, just as the Workers' Party will be against the mainstream MPs, the wokey wefter centrist globalist wokey wefters.
Our electoral system is deeply flawed, deeply undemocratic, and should be changed. It's
but
absurd.
That's the system you've got to have.
So it'll be very interesting to see if the Workers' Party and Reform would actually team up to start taking on the reform of these issues. That's going to be very interesting.
No, sorry, it's really important. It's absurd that a party could get 15 to 20% of a vote and no representation.
Don't forget Georgie Porgy and Nigel were both on the Brexit side of the Brexit referendum, and also George has already said he's from the Tony Benn school of politics, which Tony Benn was also a Brexiteer.
That's outrageous, and when if that transpires, then I think the country will be absolutely appalled at what that means for democracy. It's not surprising turnout falls and people lose interest in politics if your vote's not equal, if it doesn't count.
I mean, I know you've been valiantly, doing media interviews today and so on. You're very prominent on the media, but you really need Nigel Farage back, don't you, to help you out?
Yeah, well, there you go. That's it, and this is where we're coming to as well. If Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel actually come back out of retirement at the same time, the pincer movement on the main parties is going to be massive. Richard Tice will play on the centre right, will play the same role as George Galloway on the left by taking both a step back and letting Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage come back. The increase in both the supports for the parties will be stupendous, and it's really all bets are off at that point. I mean, I'm brilliant at making political predictions, but the actual swings and turbulence that would actually happen politically, the realignment of politics in the UK would be completely on a different scale to anything we've actually seen before.
Look, it's a big job, and I've always said if Nigel feels that he wants to get stuck in again, then that would be fantastic. But it's a big decision for him. He thought he'd left frontline politics and was obviously enjoying a broadcast career, which with another channel. So, let's wait.
Now, Nigel's already not indicated his keenness to come back. So Richard's obviously taken this question rather well. And the fact that, unlike George Galloway, who said he would step aside for Jeremy Corbyn, but thereby opening the door for Jeremy Corbyn coming and becoming the leader of the Workers' Party, Richard Tice knows that Nigel's sort of swithering whether or not Nigel wants to come back, become an MP and become the leader of the Reform Party in Parliament, which would then again revolutionise British politics. So the fact of the two main protagonists, i.e. Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage, wavering a bit on pulling the trigger on what would be the ultimate political change in British politics and ultimate in their career, the penultimate in their political careers, both in the left and the centre right for Nigel and Jeremy Corbyn. If Jeremy Corbyn just fades in by staying an independent and doesn't pull the trigger before this election, and if Nigel Farage doesn't pull the trigger and stays off the political scene, there will be inroads into both Labour and the Conservatives, but not as massive if these two were to come back and also change from an independent, as Jeremy Corbyn is, into the Workers' Party, the leader of the Workers' Party. At that point, all bets are off for the next election. And people will be jumping ship. there won't be any question about it. MPs will be jumping ship at that point, both from the Labour to the Workers' Party and from both all three parties into Reform. If Nigel comes back and Jeremy Corbyn takes over the leadership of the Reform Party. What do you guys say? Alan Partridge. Alan Partridge. There was a bell the other day when you chatted the door. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks. That's so funny, isn't it, man? So funny. So,
wait and see.
So he doesn't want to give up the salary and for the hard graft. He doesn't want to give up the salary for the hard graft of politics.
That's great questioning by Kathy.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is...
Well, you have to ask...
Yeah, that's really good questioning, Kathy. Well done.
Him, Kathy. I'm not going to speak for him, but look...
How much do you want him back, though?
Well, we're making great progress.
It's not just... and because Nigel doesn't desperately want to come back... and I think Richard's done a great job. He's said at 19% or something like 17% in the last election there. So he although this is always going to dog him just now, the transformation of Nigel coming back means that the Reform are going to start winning MPs, and this is what Nigel has to think. Are you wanting to go into politics? You could have done something monumental, but we just didn't really bother. Same question we go for Jeremy Corbyn. We could have changed British politics by going from the Labour Party to sit with George Galloway, who we're friends and also share a lot of politics together, a lot of political positions together, but they don't want to do it.
But he's the best known politician in the country, and the more oomph we can get, the more help he can get, fantastic. Bring it on is what I say. And that actually, the reality is, the more people who get stuck in and help us, the more votes we get. Our ambition this time round at this general election...
Richard would only have to stand back for a period of time. Richard could actually probably come back in as leader after Nigel, whenever that was that Nigel wanted to step down, and he could come back in as leader. And I actually would enhance Richard's political standing to have the nuance to step back as political leader. The reason Richard's not making any overview one way or another or any sort of direction is because Nigel hasn't given any sort of direction whether he's going to do it. Now everybody knows that the time is running out, even if it is an October election. You've only got 6 months or less than that. So what's this? May, June, July, August, September, October. So you've got six months. I don't know when it is in October, maybe the beginning of November. So you probably just got about 6 months. So for Nigel to come back as leader and for Jeremy Corbyn to move from an independent to the leader of the Workers' Party and have 650, which it'll grow exponentially, the Workers' Party, if George Galloway persuades Jeremy to come back as leader, come on as leader. It's going to enhance both George Galloway and Richard Tice on the longer term by actually saying, right, okay, we're prepared to take a step back as leader. But because Nigel's not said anything, Richard Tice can't actually say, yeah, it would be great coming back, because he's in a bit of political limbo here.
Which is ambitious, but not beyond the realms of possibility, is to get more votes cast than the Conservative Party. And that's why, actually, a vote for reform is not a wasted vote.
And that's what would happen if Nigel came back. There would be for sure the Reform UK would overtake the Tories. But the amazing thing is, how much is the Workers' Party going to start eating, and both the Workers' Party and Reform UK are going to start eating into Labour's huge lead just now. That is something that we don't actually know, but I've got absolutely no doubt it will start to go under 40%, and then it's going to change the dynamic of having a super majority for Labour.
it's a serious, progressive vote for the future.
How much difference do you think Nigel Farage returning to the fray would make to you? I mean, just
massive. I would think. Well, at that poll in Blackpool North, they got nearly, let's say, 17%, and came in third. Could have came in second had there been 100 or so more votes. If Nigel came back, I would say that 17% would at least go to 24%. They would have definitely came in second by a fair stretch, and they would at least 24%, could be up to 30%. Nigel's probably the most popular politician that's not in mainline politics just now. And it could overtake both Labour and the Conservative Party, which would be absolutely massive. And then you've got George coming back to take more off the Labour Party. The whole thing is going to be explosive.
Try and quantify it for us.
Well, the great thing is, you see, because his surname is probably one of the best known surnames in the country, and the media love to write about it, then obviously it's going to help boost the brand image of Reform. And look, the reality is that whilst the likes of you and I, we spend lots of time thinking politics.
And don't forget that Nigel, they've done the right thing and actually tried to identify a seat that Nigel would win, which I'm surprised they never did under UKIP. Stupid, they didn't do any surveying or polling. They've already found Clacton, I think it is, that Nigel would win and be elected in. So rather than the 8 times he's lost, he would actually then finally get in a seat as well, add as leader, and he would get other Reform people elected. It would be massive.
You know, there's still, I'm going to guess 30 to 40% of the country who've not heard of Reform or don't know what we stand for because we're relatively new. So
you're very modestly saying you're not a household name yourself.
I'm not claiming I'm a household name. I've only been in politics for a while. But you know, the reality is you've got to push on. We're making great progress compared to where we were a year ago when everybody was laughing at me.
Some people don't like Richard. I think Richard's a lovely fella. I think he's done very well. I think Nice Guy Eddie is his name. I think he's done very well in what he's done so far with Reform. He's really held his own, and he always comes across, even when I met him in person, I think he's a genuinely nice fella.
Let me tell you, the Tories are not laughing now, Kathy. They're absolutely terrified, and rightly so, given what a mess they've made of running this country.
You got any more defections under your belt from the Tories?
Well, that's for me to know, isn't it? I'm afraid I'm not going to tell you live on air. We're not giving a running commentary, but if you
so both, if Nigel comes back and Jeremy goes to the Workers' Party, we're definitely going to see MPs getting siphoned off left and centre right with both parties. So there'll definitely be defections, which is then in turn going to weaken the overall brand of both the Conservatives and the Labour Party.
Election is in the autumn or late autumn. Given the fear that's running through Tory MPs, let's wait and see, shall we?
Do you think, I mean, you are talking up the sort of existential threat that you pose to the Conservatives, but pollsters agree that there is a genuine threat, and you can see it in the poll numbers. Do you think the only hope for the Conservatives is if they try and strike some sort of pact with you? And I know you've ruled that out in the past, but when push comes to shove, you'd do the tango, wouldn't you?
No, absolutely not. When push comes to shove, they need replacing. They're socialists. They might as well join the Labour Party as far as I'm concerned. High taxes, high wasteful spending, unnecessary regulation. They haven't taken advantage of Brexit, frankly, and they've imposed mass immigration on the nation that didn't vote for it. They're a disgrace what they've done to this country, and they have to be replaced.
You'd still rather have a Tory in number 10 than Keir Starmer.
No, they can't be trusted. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't really, as Richard said, I don't think there's much of a difference, isn't it? They're both bought and sold by the Wookie wefters in Davos.
They can't be trusted. They're all socialists. It's all a disaster, and we're putting forward a serious alternative agenda.
I mean, there are degrees of socialism, though. I mean,
if we don't create some growth in this country, we are heading towards bankruptcy within one electoral cycle, and people need to wake up to the harsh economic reality.
When push comes to shove, though, we've talked about. I've taken issue with your description of Rishi Sunak as a socialist, but I know it's good copy for you, and you stand by it. But when it comes down to it, you would rather have a Conservative, albeit one you call a socialist, than a Labour Prime Minister, wouldn't you?
They're not Conservatives. They're socialists. I invented the word con-socialist because that's who they are. So no, they're
I said con-communist, but yeah.
both a disaster. I'm sticking to the plan. We're not doing a deal with socialists. Full stop.
Right. Well, that was quite interesting. It's quite good, that Times Radio. Quite interesting chat. So, what else we got? Let's see.
The former First Minister spoke to reporters at Holyrood on Wednesday and laughed off...
What's this? This is Nicola Sturgeon confirms no further police talks and says she is not pulling the strings in the SNP. I think she's pulling the strings in the police. Brexit Today, this is.
Suggestions that she has influence in the upcoming leadership contest. Nicola Sturgeon has confirmed she has not spoken to police since her husband was charged with embezzlement. On April 18th, Peter Murrell, former chief executive of the SNP, was rearrested and charged in relation to Operation Branchform, which is looking into allegations of fraud within the party. The former First Minister was arrested last year along with her husband and former party treasurer Colin Beat.
So we've got the false sexual allegations against Alex Salmond trial still to come, and we've also got the potential mass murdering under our governorship of COVID. So we'll touch on that as well.
Neither her nor Beattie have been charged. Speaking to reporters at Holyrood on Wednesday, Sturgeon was asked if she had been spoken to police in recent weeks, to which she gave a brisk no before moving on. She also said that she was not working behind the scenes in any potential leadership contest to be the latest person to take on the SNP's top job. There had been suggestions that an old guard of the party was working to ensure her former Deputy First Minister John Swinney was given the job.
Imagine not actually wanting Nippy back. I mean, really, honestly, I think there was some poll, I don't know, she probably got it when she was out in the camper van. The SNP membership wanted her back. I mean, really?
But Sturgeon refuted that, saying, "No, I'm not. I've spent almost my entire life in the thick of political drama, and I'm quite enjoying not being in the thick of political drama." She added that she hopes that...
that's quite enough of that. Oh, that's quite good, isn't it? I quite like that. Keep that open. Get rid of that. What else we got? Nigel leader. I take GG over most of them. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, here we go. So what's this from? This is from Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
This is an exciting time in Scotland's story. And Fergus, you had many years as a minister serving in my administrations, but you seem to be adapting to your role as a backbencher with some relish. So are you relishing the freedom it gives you to campaign on issues like the A9?
Well, it's never too late to start an apprenticeship, even at the age of 66, as a backbench hardened campaigner. But really, Laura has played a blinder in coming to the Petitions Committee, which is kind of the doorway to the Scottish Parliament for the public to walk through and bring issues of concern. And it's a great committee, and Laura's work has led to a fairly serious scrutiny of the serial failure, I'm afraid, of my own party to deliver on the promises which we made to dual the road by 2025. And meanwhile, sadly, tragically, people continue to lose their lives. So we're fighting a just cause, but Laura's really got it onto the agenda. And that's the Scottish Parliament system. It's about people coming through that door.
Again, the Doughballs and the Greens are trying to prevent it. The harebrained bunch, I'll come on to them later.
To the Petitions Committee to get things done for Scotland.
So, Laura, is it the aspect of the A9 as a killer road, to use the normal description? Is that what has really exercised you in this campaign?
It's particularly north of Dromochter. At places like Newton Moor, Kane-Yusie, Aviemore, Carr-Bridge, both yourself, Alec, and your successors, the former First Ministers, what happened? That's part of the scrutiny, and there shouldn't be any exemptions, nor will there be. I mean, for example, I'll be asking your successor, when she promised that the A9 would be the Scotland's first electric superhighway, was that a slogan or was there a plan? But the key thing is, why did it cease to be a priority? And, you know, if one stands back, devolution has seen lots of good things for transport for Scotland. We've seen the Borders Railway, we've seen the Aberdeen Peripheral Road, the M80, M74, the fourth crossing. Alec, you were involved in many or most of these things. And Edinburgh, God bless them, decided in their wisdom
All of them.
All of them. Edinburgh, in their wisdom, decided to choose trams. Well, you know, you have your tea and then you eat it. But the point is, every other part of Scotland, populous part, has had their transport improvements, and that's good. I don't begrudge that. It's our turn now in the Highlands, and that means the A9 and also the A96 from Inverness to Aldern, including the Nairn bypass. And, you know, the other argument is the economic one, because the Highlands and Islands are going to be the powerhouse of renewable energy over the next 20, 30 years with massive opportunity.
The SNP have sold off to some foreign corporation at a discounted price.
And are we really saying that
to not supply Scotland with its own renewable energy? I mean, quite incredible.
People from all over the world have got to navigate this goat track in order to get to their place of work.
Laura, do you have any sympathy for the government's position? I mean, they'll have told you in your meetings that you've had with the SNP government that they would want to do it. The capital budget just won't stand for it. I mean, we have been going through many years of austerity now. So, do you have sympathy for the argument that the intentions are good, but the money's just not there?
Absolutely not. I'm afraid.
So, I'm not quite sure. I want to hear
people even more angry. I think what Hamza should have done is said, "I'm sorry."
Things that seem to go wrong. Is there any semblance of truth in any of this? I mean, Laura says that Vladimir was cited as a reason. I'm not sure if that was Putin or Zelensky, but one of them certainly was. Are there any of these reasons hold any water whatsoever?
No, and the fact that they've extended plainly bogus reasons has simply added salt to the wound and made people even more angry. I think what Hamza should have done is said, "I'm sorry, we've got it wrong, and we're going to put it right."
If Hamza was apologising for everything he did wrong, that would be a longer apology than it was his time in governance.
People in their lives make mistakes. That's what they have to do. And to put it right, I mean, even although the capital position is challenging for the next 2 years, the work isn't going to be done over the next 2 years. It's going to be done over the next 10 years. And therefore, there's £4 to £5 billion, Alec, a year of capital. We only require about a tenth of that for the Highlands. But is the Highlands important enough? Or will the green tail wag the big yellow dog yet again? And we see money going to all sorts of
weird harebrained loony left policies,
squeezes, schemes, deposit returns, active psycho lanes, hate crime enforcement, goodness knows what. Or will the Highlands be the priority? Hamza says so. He says it's a cast iron guarantee.
Well, I don't know when this was filmed, but it doesn't really matter. When was this filmed? 2 weeks ago. Hamza's not going to be doing very much, is he? The hate monster. Oh, look at that. That's it there. Scotland speaks violence. The hate monster. So let's. That was quite interesting as well. But I want to see.
Probably if I were trying to think of the worst thing that could possibly happen for Tory MPs in the next 6 months, it probably is that Nigel Farage would return as the leader of the Brexit Party. That said, we do need to remember that in the end it was Nigel Farage's decision early on in the 2019 general election to essentially put up the white flag to the Conservatives by saying that his party would not stand in constituencies the Conservatives were defending.
But that was politically the correct, that will be shown to be politically the correct judgment. Whether or not Nigel not coming back is the politically the correct, maybe the best judgment for him, but it might not be the best judgment for the country. It would be the worst possible thing. Nigel's return would be the worst possible thing for the Conservatives.
He is the most charismatic figure amongst Eurosceptics, apart from Boris Johnson, and whereas Boris Johnson's star doesn't shine quite so brightly as it once did, Nigel Farage is probably still reasonably bright.
Now, James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, will speak to Parliament at 2:30 this afternoon to update MPs on the government's plan to reduce immigration. But Richard Tice, the leader of Reform UK, has said he's held numerous discussions with Tory MPs about their anger over the government's failure to deal with the increase, though he's denied offering Lee Anderson, the current Deputy Chairman of the Tory party, a lot of money to make the switch. So how big are reform as a threat to the Conservative Party? Professor John Curtis, the pollster's pollster from the University of Strathclyde, joins me now. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Patrick.
So we are hearing an awful lot about Reform UK of late, be it defections or their perceived role as challengers to the Tories on the right. Is that borne out, all this media noise, is that borne out in the polling data at all?
The answer to that is, for the most part, yes, but there is a debate going on about just how reliable that polling data is. So on average now in the opinion polls, Reform are running at about 8%. That is the highest level they've been at in this Parliament.
Well, I don't think that's correct anyway. That's obviously a few months ago. So that was Times Radio, but that was 5 months ago. It's now 18% or 17% or something. 5 years ago. See, the failure to have these filters working, and I don't know. Oh, there we go. There we are. There's Nigel there. Nigel, there we go. Here we go.
I'm delighted to be joined now by
GB News.
Tim Shipman, the chief political commentator of the Sunday Times, a former colleague of mine. Back in the day, we worked together at the Sunday Express, didn't we, when we were just young whippersnappers?
I know, and look at us now.
Look at you, you're a big, clever author of many books. And this is the latest in your... Well, I thought it was a trilogy. It was going to be a trilogy, and now it's a quartet.
Yes, a
No Way Out,
tetralogy, as they call it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It could also double up as a weapon. It's a hefty tome, and you basically decided that one book wasn't enough to cover Theresa May to Rishi Sunak, which is understandable.
Exactly. It's taken 7 years, 1,500 pages. It's now 2 books.
From the backstop to Boris. Love that. Now, let's talk about Theresa May first of all. I mean, a little bit forgotten at the moment with everything going on. How would you rate the premiership of Theresa May, Tim?
I mean, not hugely highly if you read the conclusion.
No.
Look, I mean, it is a history book, but at the same time, a lot of what happened in it is kind of still shaping events now. The original Brexit deal that Boris Johnson signed, which is kind of still with us, was 95% Theresa May's work and Oliver Robbins' work. The sort of catastrophic fallings out in the Conservative Party, which were all happening then, they're still with us now.
Yeah. Some things never change.
Some things never change. And it's, What the Theresa May years give us, I think, is a sort of model of almost how not to do the premiership.
Yes, I'm going to come up with a deal behind everyone's back. I'm not going to tell the Brexit Secretary David Davis about it. I'm then going to present it at Chequers and prompt a flurry of resignations that then leads to my tearful demise outside Downing Street.
Yeah, that's broadly it.
That's broadly it.
No, I've interviewed 260 odd people for this book. And everybody who was in a room with Theresa May, ministers, members of her own cabinet, MPs, people who were on her own staff, people in Brussels, not one of them could say with any great clarity or determination what she was really thinking while they were talking to her. And she sort of, you know, good leadership is about knowing where you're trying to go, working out a clever way of getting there, and then be able to take everybody else with you. And she seems to me to have failed on all three of those counts. And all the people who've replaced her since have failed on at least one of those counts.
Yes, well, let's get on to the people who have replaced her, who, with the greatest respect to Theresa May, are almost more interesting than her sort of chapter in this tale, although it's funny, really, that seems so distant when it consumed so much of our lives at the time. The Brexit wars between 2016 and 2019 were so agonising. And I remember, I'm sure you were at that Downing Street drinks in 2019 after Boris Johnson had won that convincing victory, convincing on two fronts for him, but also the evisceration of Corbyn. And we're all having a drink that Christmas going, oh, well, we're in for a nice quiet time. COVID hits. I know you always had a good relationship both with Boris Johnson and indeed Dominic Cummings. Let's get into the truth of this, because Nadine Dorries was in last week sort of talking about the plot and talking about Michael Gove and the dynamics of the so-called cabal that she claims brought Boris Johnson down. What really did bring Boris Johnson down?
Boris Johnson!
Dominic Cummings will tell you that he brought down Boris Johnson, and anyone who reads Book 4, which is out in June, will see a lot more detail on that than I think we've had before. But I also remember a great quote by a minister the week that Boris left Downing Street, who said, Boris Johnson is the third Prime Minister in a row to have been brought down by Boris Johnson.
Yes.
So there were sort of faults on both sides.
Yeah.
Look, the one time politics was done properly in this country was in the second half of 2019, where those two men together knew exactly what they were trying to achieve and set out with a plan to achieve it. And despite all the shenanigans we'd seen in Parliament, which populate this book, they were able to push it through and win a big majority. But those two were already at each other's throats by the January of 2020, even before Brexit had happened at the end of that month. And when COVID hit, they then fell out spectacularly and the whole government fell apart. And Boris Johnson, having given huge amounts of power to Dominic Cummings, they didn't want another aide to have the same kind of dominance and sort of say over him. And so the teams that followed were not terribly effective. Boris Johnson was a great campaigner, a great politician in lots of ways, but he wasn't a great governor. And he had these ideas and he didn't follow through on them. And ultimately, his premiership was a sort of missed opportunity, I think, for the Conservative Party. And a bit like Margaret Thatcher sort of had a shadow over the Tories for 2 decades thereafter, it looks at the moment like the shadow of Boris Johnson and the debate about should he have been removed or what was he going to achieve is going to take the Tories up a cul-de-sac for several more years.
Well, a bit like comes Nicola Sturgeon. They haven't really achieved very much, have they? They've been pretty useless.
Years to come.
Do you think he will stage a Cincinnati-style comeback, and when do you think he'll do it?
Well, look, the people around him would say, look, at the moment he's making lots of money, he's very passionate about Ukraine, he's off doing things he's interested in, he's in no rush to return. I think the scenario in which they imagine that might become a possibility is not sort of straight after the general election or even before it, but if you get a new leader in who tries for 2 years, either from the One Nation wing or from, you know, much further to the right, we all assume it will be someone further to right that will take over after the election. If that person is failing 18 months, 2 years down the line, the clarion calls at that point for, well, where's the guy who won us some elections? That's the moment where, if it is at all possible, that it looks like that's the sort of window of opportunity, and that he could come back in and try and take on Starmer, you know, at an election in 5 years' time. And one of the reasons Boris Johnson fell, I think, is that he just didn't rate Keir Starmer. He was, 6 points behind? He always told people, remember when I started running for mayor, I was 17 points behind Ken Livingstone, and I beat him. He thought 6 points behind, given what had happened, was sort of 15 points ahead, really, in the current context. He couldn't conceive of not beating Keir Starmer, who he didn't rate at all, and he assumed everybody else would conclude the same in his own party, and of course they didn't, and that's another of the reasons why he's not with us any longer.
I mean, if he did sort of stage the comeback a bit later on, who's your pick for interim party leader? Because we know that Rishi Sunak won't be hanging around if the result of the general election is as bad as the pollsters predict. Indeed, before I ask you that, actually, do you think he's in jeopardy after the May elections?
I think potentially, yes.
That's great enough of that. Yeah. Let's go back.
So one would be a success. Let's talk about this year, because it's a big year for politics. It's an election year. How big a player do you think Reform UK can be?
As big as possible, frankly, because we think that the country is being terribly run. We think that the two main parties are essentially two sides of the same socialist coin, is how I describe it. High taxes, high regulation, high government.
Richard Tice once say two sides of the same arse, just like it's just like Georgie Porgy.
Spending, mass immigration.
To give people a bit of geography, Vauxhall Station's just down here. This is an area of London where you've got a bit of a property footprint. And if we just swing the camera around this way, many of our viewers will recognise this building. This is the House of Parliament, of course. Do you think you might have an impact actually in there in terms of MPs?
Well, we certainly hope so. The important thing is to get in the House of Commons, and that's what we're aiming to do.
So one would be a success?
Well, one's clearly better than none.
Yeah, okay. Where's your confidence come from?
I just believe in myself. Why not? You've got to. I mean, you have to be an optimist to go into politics, so you've got to have some confidence and you've got to go for it.
Have you always been confident?
Since leaving university,
yeah.
Believe it or not, although I'm 6'2", I actually grew very late.
Look at the size of this fella, man. If he's and Richard is very tall, so this guy must be at least 6'4".
My sister, who's she's under 5'10", she used to call me Titch.
Right. There'll be people watching this now and saying, "Why?"
Must be bigger than that. He must be about 6'5", 6'2". What are you saying that? That's probably about 6'5".
Man, he's a climate change denier.
I'm a climate change realist.
He's bordering on racist in some of his policies, and some people
bordering on racism. Oh my goodness! All the left wing talking points.
And when I said to somebody yesterday I was going to come and interview,
but it's not really. It's all the wokey left talking points. That's what he's basically, and this is the face of the media.
He's a crank. What do you say to those people who have that image of you at the moment?
When people try and smear me using those sort of words, they've immediately lost the argument, because democracy.
Right, are we going to hear about
in a country like the United Kingdom?
What is this anyway? So this was 5 news. 5 news. But I want to go back to right, where were we? Let's go back to the thing. See if we can get anything updated on Nigel. Oh, there's Nigel for the comeback. Let's see. This is up 12 days ago. There wasn't really anything interesting there. Nigel must run 3 months ago. GB News again.
Business? This 80-second video is about to completely change the way you work.
Nigel Farage has said that he's now considering a sensational return to frontline politics after new polling indicated he would comfortably win a former UKIP seat. A survey commissioned by Aaron Banks, an ex-UKIP donor who also played a key role alongside Nigel during the Brexit referendum, suggested that the GB News presenter would easily win in the constituency of Clacton in Essex, which in 2015 became the only constituency ever to return a UKIP MP in a general election. Now, Nigel and I had a cracking discussion on the show earlier this week, and it was all about his future, as well as the claim that a vote for reform is a vote for Labour. So take a listen to Nigel and myself in action. In his first major interview of the year, speaking to the Telegraph newspaper, Rishi Sunak was talking about you. He said that a vote for Farage is a vote for Starmer. Do you think that both I and Rishi Sunak have a point? You're going to hand the keys of number 10 to Keir Starmer.
Well, not if Georgie Porgy Galloway's getting to do it, and Jeremy Corbyn. That's going to have a whole different change in perspective on the way that the politics are run. So it's not just going to be the centre right, but also the left that is now in a pincer move. And we may see major, I think the Labour Party support is soft, and we may see major splits away from the Liblabcon party to other parties, and maybe even to the Doughballs and the Green.
Oh, you're all so boring. I've been hearing this election after election. Now they're saying, look, we know we're useless, But please vote for us because Labour are worse. Boring, boring, boring. Our politics is failing at every level.
Are you going to have a frontline role with reform in the run-up to the next election? Will you become leader? Will you be the chairman?
Well, I'm already the founder of the party. I chose the name. I set it up. I'm the president. I'm going to support Ben Habib in the Wellingborough.
Yeah, but it's only going to change. This is all well and good, Nigel, but you and I both know that this is not going to change unless you become leader. Richard Tice doesn't have to go far. He can then reimpose himself as leader at a later time. And the kudos will come for him stepping back, just like with George with Jeremy Corbyn. The kudos for taking a step back for both George and Richard, both of who are doing an interesting, similar and progressive in the fact of progressing both the political parties in the polls. But the major effect is only going to happen if you come back as leader and Jeremy Corbyn leads the Workers' Party. Jeremy Corbyn doesn't need to set up a new party to come in as leader to lead the Workers' Party.
By-election, because I think actually it could be a very good wake-up call for the whole Westminster establishment. As to whether I get more deeply involved or not, I don't know. I haven't decided. I'm weighing up all the options.
Whether you love or loathe Nigel Farage, he must run for Parliament. It's a demonstration of how flawed our electoral system.
To be honest with you, that would be great for Nigel, because obviously Nigel's tried a number of occasions, and to actually get elected is going to be a great triumph over the times that he's pursued it and stood. But the thing that is really required is I'm coming back as leader. It's all very well getting elected and he will become the leader for reform in the Parliament. But the best thing for him to do would be to become the leader of reform. Only at that profile and him doing that will the actual true significance and the breaking of the two-party system, and with George, with Jeremy Corbyn. Only at that stage, where Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel become the leaders, will we see the realignment of British politics. By being sort of non-committal on it, or I'm the president, all that stuff, isn't going to change what is required to be done.
System is that arguably the most consequential politician of his generation, the man who made Brexit happen, who unearthed the debanking scandal, and who's now part of a broadcasting revolution here at GB News, has never sat in the House of Commons. The elephant in the room is that the elephant hasn't been in the room. How can a man who has shaped the political and constitutional destiny of this country never have sat in our main democratic chamber? Having been cancelled by other broadcasters, it's been of critical importance that Nigel has had this platform on GB News to represent the views of millions of ordinary people. In the case of Brexit, over 17 million people who voted for it. But having won an army of new fans on I'm a Celebrity, with Reform UK, Nigel's political home, boasting a more than 10% share of public support, and with news that he would likely win a seat at the next election, I believe that it's essential for our democracy and for the wider political conversation that Nigel is in the House of Commons. Parliament should represent a diversity of views in this country, and whilst I worry about proportional representation, because of the first-past-the-post system, the House of Commons is full of party loyalists, towing the line, and career politicians who know precious little about the real world. I had to laugh when Keir Starmer said that Rishi Sunak doesn't get Britain. This is a leader of the opposition who struggles to define what a woman is, who wants to splash £28 billion a year on flaky renewables, a man who genuflects to the latest divisive woke cause, and who has said that he prefers the global elite of Davos in Switzerland rather than the home of our democracy, Westminster. And I've got to say that Rishi Sunak isn't exactly man of the people either, as a privately educated multi-millionaire. That said, his 5 key pledges are a lot more in touch with ordinary voters than Starmer's 5 missions that don't even include stop the boats. When it comes to who gets Britain, well, Nigel Farage beats both of them into a cocked hat. which is why it's time he became a Member of Parliament. At that point, not too many people would bet against Nigel Farage MP becoming Nigel Farage PM.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we'll leave it there. Are you guys saying anything? Have you given up the ghost? I thought you were watching still game. I take GG over most of them. GG, George Galloway. Right, I'm out here. That was fantastic. Had a great time. The first time I've done live streaming with the new setup. I think it seems to have worked quite well. Better picture quality of me, better lighting. The green screen's working. The sound seems to be working. I'll have a wee look at it and see if there's any updates to be made. But all looks like a goer here. My baby gorillas, you know I love you guys.